This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Global Village. I'm Buddy Kunanan. And I know, folks, in this show, we take you around the world, you go visit amazing places, you meet interesting people, and you learn about international culture. Now, folks, tonight is a special show because this is actually the third installment of our special series on France. A few weeks ago, we had French-Philippines United Action, where we highlighted the wonderful NGO work that this group is doing, followed by Le French Tech Philippines, and we talked about French startups and the dynamic French entrepreneur scene which is happening in Paris and all over France. Tonight is all about French culture, and I'm proud to introduce to you our guest for tonight. She's the Deputy Director of Alliance Française of Manila, Stephanie Davidson. Stephanie, welcome to Global Village.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here. And I say it's a pleasure because, you know, French culture is really a powerhouse. There's so much to talk about, and it must be, if not the most culture-rich country in the world, your country, France. Now, before we talk about France, let's talk about you, Stephanie. You have a very interesting name, Stephanie Davidson, or Stephanie Davison, as a Frenchman would say it. Tell us a bit about who is Stephanie Davidson.
So my name is actually British, although I represent France abroad. I'm cheating a little bit because I was actually born in England from a Scottish father and an English mother. So right away I had different identities, so I think that's why I came to traveling and representing France abroad.
Yes. So interesting. How did you get involved with Alliance Française? What were you doing before you joined this office?
So I started as a teacher. I was teaching French as a foreign language in different countries at university level. So I started in India, actually.
Wow.
Then I became a teacher trainer. So I started training teachers who in different countries who were going to work in Alliance Française, in Institut Français. Also, I was working in Malaysia. I was working at the embassy in linguistic cooperation. So there I was training Malaysian teachers under a program with the Ministry of Education. These teachers were going to become French teachers in Malaysia. Then I went to Morocco as an academic coordinator and then academic director.
In Marrakesh?
In Marrakesh.
Marrakesh.
Yes.
Lovely, lovely city, lovely city. It seems like you spent a lot of time in Asia and outside of France, basically. And now it brings you to the Philippines. How long have you been posted here?
Almost a year now.
And how has your stay been so far?
Well, Alliance Française, where I work now, is a beautiful place in a busy city. So there's a city with a lot of potential, I think, for us who are looking to promote French language and culture. So,
yes. What are your impressions of the Philippines? You were promoting French culture in India, in Morocco, in Malaysia. What do you think is the potential of promoting French culture here in the Philippines? Are Filipinos, in your opinion, compared to others, very receptive to French culture?
Well, the difference, for example, in Morocco, people learn French because they need to, because they have to.
It's a language, yeah.
In the Philippines, what's nice is people learn French because they want to, because they're interested in the French language. Some have projects to go work in Quebec, or in Canada, or some are planning to go live in France. But yeah, I'm really impressed. We have some students who just love the French language, and they come to our students' events. They speak French fluently, and I'm really impressed. Didn't expect to find that here.
Well, I mean, speaking personally for myself, it's a great frustration. I'm probably one of the people who is going to learn French at Alliance Française. Big frustration of mine. But let's talk about French culture, because this show is about French culture, and we want to promote it. How would you describe French culture? I mean, I know it's a big word,
Yeah.
It's a big topic, but how would you put your finger on that, French culture?
It is a difficult question. I would say when we think French, we think gastronomy, fashion, way of life.
Yes.
Because the French, they like after work going sit in a terrace, have a drink with their friends. They like socializing, and the French are also very interested in cultural events. They go out, they go to the theater, they go to concerts. In the summer, we have festivals all over France that bring thousands of people. And the history. I mean, France has a lot of diversity, a rich history with beautiful buildings, architecture. So it's
yes, it's very. I'm hard pressed to think of a country that can actually hold a candle up to France in that sense. In the amount of cultural riches that you can offer, that you can share with the rest of the world, it's staggering if you think about it. From the gastronomical to the architectural to fashion to language,
the language
it's
also.
amazing.
Yeah. What's fascinating about France, for such a small country, there is a diversity of habits, of cultures, and of landscapes also. It's from one region to the other, everything changes, the houses, the buildings, the architecture, the accents. There are also regional languages which are unfortunately disappearing. But
What is it about French society that makes the nation so culturally rich? What is it about French society, or the land, or the people, the nature of the people? What is it about it that makes your country such a rich treasure trove of everything cultural?
it might be the education. It might be the fact that we are, there's also quite a strong identity in Europe, so we get to know our neighbors and where we're placed in Europe, the location. So, yeah.
What would you say would be the core strengths of French culture? When you talk about French culture, I mean, obviously there's so many aspects to it, but what would you say would be the pillars of French culture? I mean, I know it's a difficult question because there's so much really to probably hard to identify. But if you were to identify maybe the main strengths of French culture, what should you say would be?
I think it's the freedom of expression. When we are free, we can create, and so the more we can create, the more productions there are, and yeah, people are curious. They go out, they go.
And it shows, no? It shows in if you visit France and you get to see, as you mentioned, the way of life of the people, their nature, their temperament. It really shows in the people and how they live, and it's something that really permeates every aspect of French life. So just going to France and living there is an experience altogether. It's a cultural, it's a cultural immersion.
Especially in the summer, I would say. The people are a bit different in winter, in the summer, although in winter we have snow, we have the mountains, you can go skiing. But in the summer, the people, you can see the French, they're so happy to live. And when I go home on holiday in the summer, I love to see people eating out and everything that goes on. Even the tiniest villages, they will have some events going on in the summer.
And in English, there is a word to describe, something to that effect. It's called, which we've adapted in English. When you say we English speakers, bon vivant, right? Someone who enjoys life and all that. Okay, unfortunately, when people go to France, most tourists, they stick to Paris, which is understandably the most famous city in France and possibly one of the most famous cities and most beautiful cities in the world. And but from the cultural point of view, if one were to go to France and one would want to experience French culture, really to know what it is to be in France and connected with the people and society, what would you suggest and recommend?
Well, of course, I'm from the south, so I would definitely say go to the south of France because people are friendly, they're open, and because it's so beautiful. I mean, Provence attracts most tourists just after Paris. Paris is definitely a beautiful city, no doubt about it, but to be honest, it's not the place where the French are the friendliest. So if a tourist only goes to Paris, I'm afraid they'll get the wrong impression about how French people really are. So definitely I would recommend to try. I mean, France is so different, the east, west, north, south, so I think you have to try a bit of everything actually. You have to go northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast.
It's just so diverse, as you mentioned, and because you're in the middle, you're surrounded by all these countries in Europe, and each has its own character. You go to the German side, close to Germany, and maybe it changes a little bit compared to the south where you're from, or maybe near Spain, the border of Spain. It changes.
For sure. Even the way people dress and the way they talk and the way they look, what they look like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about, let's say, for you, if you would make some recommendations, what would be your top? Let's say when you talk about French cultural experiences, what would you say would be your top picks? If you were talking to the people going there and they want to experience the real France.
I think you have to go to the mountains because our mountains are beautiful, and you were talking about where to experience real France. I think it's the same in other countries. The cities, it's just a mixture of people from everywhere. But if you go to the little villages or to the mountains, it'll be the real French. I'd recommend the mountains, but then we have Brittany, we have where the surfers are, the southwest.
Very good.
There's something for everyone in France. If you're more of a city person, there are beautiful cities. If you're a nature person or a beach person, there's something for everyone.
And you mentioned you're from Marseille, and this city has it's very famous. In fact, your national anthem is named after after the city, basically. But it had a kind of colorful reputation, let's put it that way. How is it these days? How is Marseille?
It's still quite colorful, to be honest. There are people from everywhere, but recently it was a European Capital of Culture, and when it was elected, there were they did a lot of renovation works, and now the reputation is changing, and it's becoming the place to be.
Very good, very good. Okay, let's talk about Alliance Française, the office that you're deputy director of here in Manila. What is the mission of Alliance Française?
So we have several missions, but the most important ones are the promotion of French language and culture. So we offer French classes, that's our main activities. So we open our doors to anyone who would like to learn French, either in our premises, or we also offer online classes. And we organize cultural events, so it can be either French artists or Francophone, artists from French-speaking countries, but also local artists, Filipino artists who have a link or something, some link with the French, with France.
How old is Alliance Française, and who started? I mean, when did AF begin?
It began in 1920.
Oh, wow.
In
Okay.
I don't know the location to be
Yes.
honest, but it wasn't in Makati. We are now in Makati.
Okay, all
So,
right. No, I mean, you're saying it started here in 1920. Have you guys been here that long in Manila? No.
In Manila, it's 1920.
Oh my gosh. So you must have been one of the first cultural centers, if not the first, to really formally open it in the Philippines. Now, but is it a big organization? Because I understand you have Alliance Francaise centers all over the world. You've got, in Asia, you've got so many, for instance, just here.
Yeah, it's true that there are many Alliances Françaises all over the world, but we are not that much connected. Each Alliance Française is independent. It's a local non-profit organization with its board members, which are mostly Filipinos. But usually the director is French, sent by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Very good. This and you can see really in establishing, and I assume it was a French government initiative to really support the establishments of Alliance Francaise overseas. Was it a French government?
Sometimes it's local initiatives. Actually, they are the one saying we'd like to open an Alliance Française, and then they have to ask for the authorization.
Yes, because this is actually soft diplomacy at work.
Yes, exactly.
Really, I mean, it's spreading French culture, and really, when you talk about exports from France, that is really your biggest export. When you think about the cheese, the wine, the tourism, the culture, and all that, the fashion, really culture is really your number one export, I think.
Yep.
And this is really soft diplomacy at work, and to think that you've been here in the Philippines since 1920, I wasn't even aware. I thought it was like 1950s or 60s. I wasn't aware, but back in the 20s, you guys were already here. Okay, now. In the world, would you have an idea how many, how widespread is Alliance Francaise? I mean, are you guys available, or do you have a presence in all the in all the continents?
All the continents, for sure. There's approximately 700 Alliances Françaises. The biggest networks are in India, China, and Brazil. Well,
in Southeast Asia?
Country.
How about here in ASEAN?
In Southeast Asia, we're in Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Malaysia. Yeah.
And in the Philippines, the Alliance Francaise here in Manila, how is it compared to the ones we have in the region? I mean, is this one of your bigger centers?
Yes, we are actually one of the biggest. We are very similar to Singapore, and people are quite surprised that we are much bigger than what people might think. We are actually quite successful.
And it goes to show really the strong links of the Philippines with French culture and that affinity, that warmth that the Filipinos have for French culture, because I understand that Alliance Francaise operates here in its center as an independent body in business, and so that is a testament to really how successful the promotion of French culture has been and is here in the Philippines. Excellent. Stephanie, we have paused for a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk to you about learning French, which is a lot of people are scared of it, but you know, it's something that many view as a challenge, and we're going to talk to you, and discuss how to do it and the best approaches, what kind of programs you guys can offer, and all that. Okay. So guys, stick around for more of French culture here on Global Village. We'll be back in a few minutes.